Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. We often talk about various social issues as they do exist in the Pakistani society, of course inviting Pakistani panelists to share their opinions on the same. But today on our show we'll be doing something different. We'll be talking about, how the Pakistani society, how the Pakistani culture, how the Pakistani etiquette and of course the customs are seen by foreigners living in Pakistan. We'll try and take a real life narrative from them. We'll also be trying to actually debunk not one, rather several misconceptions which do exist about different facets of the Pakistani society, be it with regards to women empowerment in the society today, be it regards to the status of, education, be it with regards to, tourism and related questions. And in this regard, we'll try to understand that, when expats come to Pakistan, what are their preconceived notions and how, of course, by virtue of experience and by virtue of course, interacting with Pakistanis, they actually debunk the same. We'll generally be talking about foreigners and expats and of course their perceptions about the Pakistani society on our show today. And to do that, let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Miss Fiona Robertson, who is a senior academic manager at the British Council. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and welcome to the show. Alongside her, I have Thomas Smith, who is the director engineering of a local company.
Hello.
Hello and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, to start the conversation with you, Fiona, I think we must of course talk about, your experience in Pakistan. You came here 4 years ago and of course I understand the fact that you have consistently stayed here. So first of all, tell us that, what was it that made you actually come here and how has your experience been like generally?
Well, firstly, I'm really sad to go. Very, very sad. I'm very fond of Pakistan and I've had some incredible experiences. Of course, there was the pandemic in the middle, so I've also had some very difficult moments when I was in lockdown. But overall, I think after the initial sort of getting used to the place, the country.
But I think you were very well placed in the sense that, you were here in Lahore, which is of course considered to be the cultural capital of the country. And I think Lahore has that perfect, mix. It's rather an amalgamation of being a classic city, but at the same time, it has that contemporary element to it too. So, what is it that you feel that, you're leaving behind? Because I know you've been networking quite a bit, more so in the Pakistani circles quite a lot, and you've been traveling a lot. So what is it that you'll miss about Lahore the most particularly?
Okay, so there's an amazing art culture. And I don't know if you know, but I started painting.
I know.
So that is really where I'm leaving my heart. I think there's an amazing network of artists here. So it was something that I wasn't expecting to discover. So, and to be able to join local artists and create with them has been really something special.
Right. Coming to you, sir, I understand the fact that, you've been working in so many countries, 30 countries you were telling me before you came to Pakistan. So of all the countries, what made you come to Pakistan? Was it because, you wanted to have a different kind of a work experience, expand yourself as a professional, or was it because you wanted to explore a different kind of a culture?
It was a mix of both. When I first came here, it was basically a work need. As my company was involved here and somebody needed to come here and build a team and lead it. And I had been in many countries before and just thoroughly enjoyed my experience. I would share it with my children in USA. And so when the opportunity came to come to Pakistan, I jumped at it. It was somewhere new, somewhere I hadn't been before, and all prior experiences were positive.
Right.
So motivation for coming here was basically work, but then, beyond that is I came here and I immersed and I was happy to get to know the people and the culture, and that's been basically my reason for coming.
And I think the most interesting thing is, I think compared to Fiona, that you've been here for like almost 10 years now, you were telling me, a decade now. So from the time that you came to Pakistan, which I believe would be 2012 to now, 2022, how do you see the Pakistani society evolving?
I've seen it basically on the upswing, for sure. There's been some ups and downs. There's been moments of concern and fear, and like Fiona mentioned, I was here during pandemic as well. I went through COVID myself here. My company helped take wonderful care of me in my apartment, and the society in general, what I've seen change is there's generally bigger cultural diversity, tolerance.
Right.
So the tolerance for different cultures, I feel, has been growing and getting better year over year.
Right, and I think this is something that you've also actively been working on. You were telling me with regards to, ensuring gender inclusivity in your own, engineering company as well, ensuring that, you make an active effort to hire more females on board that way. So I think this is something that we generally see in the Pakistani society. Over a period of time, we have seen more women in all professions, so to speak. So tell us about your particular experiences in this regard.
Well, one particular example is when I first started working here very frequently back in 2015, I was at a power plant, and it was very much male dominated. So all of the engineers were there, the technicians and this. And I noticed in one room where the copy machine was kept, there was one female employee who appeared to be engineering. So on one day I approached her and I who are you and what are you doing? And oh, I'm an engineer and I'm a gold medalist in electrical engineering, and I just found it a bit odd. So I then asked the male staff, I said, what's with this engineer? And they said, well, we put her in the room by herself because we thought that she would be more comfortable like that.
Right.
So I really then went out of my way to give assignments, and what came back generally was much better than I asked for. And in the end, I built a team here locally, and she became an employee and really had a blossoming career.
And generally, even if we now see, we see more women engineers, more women scientists as well in Pakistan. I think the number generally has increased, so to speak. They might not be getting that much coverage by the media, but when we talk about, the on-ground statistics, we have seen a, rapid increase in the same. Coming to you, I think we must also, of course, talk about the amazing work that you have been doing in this regard. And I think that is a commonality amongst the two of you, that you particularly have also been very actively advocating for, of course, the right of education, especially that being given to the girl child in the country. So tell us more about that, that from the time that you came in, 4 years down the lane, considering that you have stayed in the country for 4 years, what is the progress that you see?
A lot of activism. I mean, there's a lot of things being done all over, all kinds of women, and women are becoming role models. So, and particularly women, as you say, engineers, or having. I met a female jockey. So all of these things are happening.
Right.
But there's so much still to be done. There's so much still to be done, and but it's not just in Pakistan. I mean, so it's things like traditional perception. So women feel emancipated, but then my colleagues were telling me that they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning because they have to prepare. I mean, they go to work, but they have to prepare the family dinner before they go to work.
There are other socio-cultural constraints on them. I think this is something that you were earlier discussing as well, but I think both of you would agree with me on this, that, over a period of time, we have seen that, society, the Pakistani society has given women leverage, so to speak. We now also see women resorting to daycare centers, them exercising their rights, in some cases even quite aggressively when it comes to, going for maternity leaves and all. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And one characteristic that I've seen in my area is some of the companies are even offering finally the in-office daycare.
Right.
Which to me, I didn't even know it existed here, but it's a wonderful thing. And so it's encouraging the women that have entered that workforce, and specifically the engineering field, can stay there, can stay in career, don't have to take a pause for the child to reach school ages, and stay perhaps on the fast track in that company. So I think that's a big positive.
And also I think this whole thing which started after COVID-19, flexible hours, that has made actually, women easier to employ and of course to sustain their jobs too at the end of the day. To which you wanted to add something?
Yes, I wanted to say that I've also noticed men taking paternity leave, so which was something that I wasn't aware of before.
Right.
So again, going back to the role of men, the role of the family, men are feeling proud to support their wife.
Of course, so I think that I would believe is also, of course, a very welcoming change. So, but moving on, of course, talking about the positive social developments which are happening, but of course, relating that with your own experience of, being in the country, so to speak, how easy or how difficult was it for you to settle in Pakistan?
So, it was a little bit difficult at the beginning. because I thought I was in the Middle East before, and I thought it would be more similar to the Middle East, and then I discovered it wasn't. The big thing for me was not being able to walk around Lahore.
Right.
Because everybody goes by car. And, you know, if I did walk around, people would stop and ask me if I needed help. And even if you go, like, for example, Alam, and you go to different shops,
Right.
To go to the next shop, even though you could walk, you get in the car and you go down and
But
park.
in a way, if you look at it, I think that's a sign of us being hospitable at the end, you know, showing our concern.
It is, I appreciate that, but I would love to be able to just walk around the city.
Yeah.
Although I'm used to it now.
Yeah, of
I'm used
course.
to it now. Now I drive myself.
Now you drive yourself,
Yes.
you know, kind of overcome that.
Yes.
But I think this would comparatively still be less in an urban city like Lahore, because if you were to be living in maybe perhaps a more rural or remote area of the country, maybe then this would be a serious concern. But yes, I understand where you're coming from. But with regards to you and your settling in here, you don't understand Urdu and you've never learned Urdu. So was that kind of an hindrance for you to, you know, integrate in the society?
Yes, in terms of the work experiences in the engineering world, really the documents and the conversation, it's in English, so it's easy. And there's, I think, several engineering terms that are not in Urdu. So I would even sit in maybe a board meeting and the conversation would be in Urdu, but I'd pick up one or two English words mixed in there, so at least I had an idea of what was going on.
Right.
So work-wise, the English only was not a big barrier. Socially was a completely different
I was
story.
about to come to that.
Completely different. Is outside the work circle, I did make friends locally and joined little meetups and get-togethers, and they were very polite and kind and include me in English and speak most of the conversation in English. But eventually it would go back to Urdu, and I was still happy to be there, so I was out of the home and learning, and I'd pick up little bits of Urdu.
Right. So how long did it take you to adjust to Pakistan, the Pakistani society and the culture?
Well, I would say right away, I got into small villages, I was invited into people's homes, so I had little bits and pieces, but I was resistant. I was actually, you know, a bit worried about security and safety. And over time, over a period of years, since I've been in and out for so long, that slowly just faded away. Maybe beyond where it should, but I'm quite comfortable going out again, like a walkable city. There's pieces that are walkable, there's pieces that are not.
Right. But I think at the end of the day, Pakistanis are very hospitable. Moving on, I think a very important thing which we must of course talk about is conceptions, the image, the perspective that you had of Pakistan and of course, you know, Pakistani people before you came here to what you actually found it to be on the ground. So how do you compare and contrast the both?
So, as I said before, you know, I came to Pakistan thinking it was a challenging country. And to be honest, I found it much more comfortable.
Right.
But the thing that really surprised me is the weddings, because I didn't realize that weddings are such a big thing here. And that, you know, the winter, basically the whole social life is
it's
weddings.
the wedding season basically. It
Yes.
starts from October and goes on till March. But
But
now we
every-
have the summer weddings too.
Yes, so, you know, I thought, because in the UK, I mean, we have a wedding once every 5 years. Here, they go on and they last for 3 days, and then sometimes you've got 2 weddings in the same evening, and something that I was just absolutely, for me, it's like unbelievable.
But do you not think it's more enjoyable too, because you know it's something that you don't get to experience otherwise in different parts of the world, and this is something which is very specific to our Asian, more particularly Pakistani culture, that you know weddings are a big part of us.
Well, I
basically.
discovered I had to spend a lot of money on my clothes for a start.
Right.
You know, lots of costumes. I couldn't wear the same dress to, you know, with people were.
That's another story, right.
so-
But I think after COVID, the trends have changed, Fiona. You know, people now also prefer simpler weddings, so to speak. I know people who've just called, you know, 4 or 5 people and they've just had a very intimate house kind of a nikah or something of that sort. But I suppose that, you know, of course, coming from the West, this is something very different, so to speak. But I'm sure you must have enjoyed the weddings too.
Oh, yes,
all
no,
the
it's
festivities,
really
the
enjoyable.
dances, the music, the food.
It's quite
everything.
tiring. It's quite tiring.
It's quite tiring. So, is this one of the reasons why you're choosing to go back now that the wedding season is around the corner?
Not at all. No. I'm delighted that we're coming. I've got a wedding on Saturday, so I'm getting myself all geared up to it.
Great. So, but coming to you, I think a very important question which we must of course address, and you know, I think this is something very relevant when we talk about America, that you know, the American dream is that, you know, and every person feels that, you know, they should be given equal opportunity. And in this regard, we also understand that, you know, Pakistanis also have their own notion of what the American dream is. So I think for the clarity of the audience and for the, you know, Pakistani society at large, tell us that, you know, how do you bifurcate the both? Because I understand that there is a very big difference between the two.
Yeah, regarding the American dream, it's clearly there, and I hear about it almost daily. Is oh, I want to go to America, oh, I want to get a schooling in America, or these kind of things. And to me, the big difference is a matter of what's granted. Having grown up in the U.S., the U.S. normal person says, I expect a good education. It's granted to me. I expect the opportunity for a good job. It's granted to me. I expect to find a good spouse. These are things that are taken for granted.
Right.
And what I see different here is it's not taken for granted. So I see very hard driving students that maybe can afford or maybe just choose to be the top performers in their class. They have to work very hard. They have to go the extra mile.
Right.
And whether it's a future in a foreign country or just staying here and helping develop the country, it still seems to me like it's a bit of a harder road.
Generally, we have seen the way Pakistan has evolved. Although, of course, we do see that, you know, women are being given greater representation. They do have a stronger voice than what it was before. There are still areas on which we need to work. So, in your opinion, what are those areas?
Well, absolutely, but it's not just here. I mean, women are in the West. I mean, women have much more freedom now, even compared to my mum, even compared maybe to me when I was a child. But there's still a long way to go in the West, in Europe. So, of course, in Pakistan, I mean, we've just at the tip of the iceberg concern not just women's rights, it's rights of all marginalized people.
Right.
Okay, so it's something that, of course, at a certain point you get the critical mass and things really start to change. But it's really important to keep going, and it's that women need to know inside themselves what is right for them.
And I think in this regard, when we talk about the society at large, I think a very important component of the society is also, of course, you know, food. Something, you know, that Pakistan is, of course, known for, the exotic cuisine that we have in that regard. So if you were to make a comparison, you know, because you've been in the UK, and then I also understand that you've lived in Europe for some time, in France, you were telling me once. So how easy was it for you to actually get accustomed to this? Because, you know, we have spicy foods. So was it like easy for you to get used to eating spicy, rich food, full of oil?
So, first of all, I love spicy food. I don't have a problem at all with spiciness, so that's not a problem.
Right.
But I do have another problem because I'm vegetarian and I don't eat dairy either. I'm sort of almost vegan. That is really difficult because particularly in restaurants, they don't cater for that. So, because meat is seen as something that everybody has to eat. On the other hand, there's a huge amount of vegetables. So at home, I can eat the most wonderful things because there's all this fruit, there's all these vegetables. And I mean, I would really advocate for Pakistanis to eat less meat and more vegetables.
Right, from a healthy perspective. You know, that's an issue I generally see, not only with you, with people who generally are vegetarians, because even when they go out in the restaurants, it's difficult for them to get something other than, of course, you know, if they're just opting to have an ice cream or some dessert that way. But sir, how easy or difficult was this for you? Because again, then when we make that comparison with, you know, the typical Pakistani cuisine to what we have in America, and American food, but at least by my yardstick, would be, of course, quite bland compared to Pakistani food. So how did you kind of adjust there? Because I'm sure you must not be eating out every day.
It took me time. And initially, when I would be flying in, flying out, I would have 2 suitcases, 1 clothes, 1 ingredients. And I like to cook, so I had an apartment, and it took me a long time to be pushed out of that. But after I did, the local restaurants are very top notch. It also took me some time to learn to buy my vegetables at the roadside market, not the big supermarket. But like the quality of food in the restaurants and the variety of meals, for sure, when I went to a local place, Spice Bazaar, something like this, where the culture and the menu is all about spicy, I would get it and I would love it, but I would ask them to go light on the spice.
Right.
But the other thing I wanted to add, you know, it's the small local places that are so wonderful. And I love, you know, when you're traveling on the highway and these little tea places for the truck drivers, and you go and you have a little
Have you had
kiosk.
food from there? Street food is so good in Pakistan, basically. So that is a speciality that we have. And I think with this influx of so many vloggers, young social media influencers coming from all parts of the world to Pakistan, I think they've kind of promoted this aspect, for which, of course, they must be given due credit. But, you know, moving on, I think we must also talk about, you know, Pakistan being considered to be one of those places. I remember there was this report, you know, which actually said in the year 2020, it was a US travel magazine which said that, you know, Pakistan is a very hot spot. It should be that one place where everybody should go, actually. One of the most top rated destination. So considering that, of course, you know, you have been around Pakistan quite a lot in this time that you have stayed here, how would you debunk this myth that, you know, it's not safe for people, especially expats, to travel alone?
So I travelled on my own, I mean, with a guide and driver, from Gilgit to Chitral, and then down to the Kalasha Valley, and then back down to Islamabad, which took me about 10 days.
Right.
I'd love to go back there. I had absolutely no problems whatsoever and felt perfectly safe. So I don't think it's an issue. I mean, in a way, I think I was better looked after there than I have, you know, there are situations I've been in other countries where I didn't feel particularly safe as a tourist. So, you know, I think possibly because, I mean, of course, there's a lot of tourism in Pakistan,
Right.
but it's not as much as, for example, Egypt, somewhere
Yeah,
like
right.
that. So because of that, there's still that sort of homeliness. People would invite you into their houses for lunch, and there's a certain sort of pride. You get local people managing. Right. I mean, this is not completely true, but I hope it stays like this. It's the local people that are welcoming the tourists.
Right. Again, I think going back to the basics that, you know, hospitality is something that you see, you know, that is deeply entrenched in us as a society. And I think this is something that we're very proud of. But I think moving on, we must also, of course, talk about the family structure of the, you know, Pakistani society as it is. And I think this is something, again, in which we as a nation take pride in. How we guard the institution of family, so to speak. And, you know, there is a general trend, you know, unlike in the West, that, you know, the parents here, they're very willing, of course, to look after their children until and unless they're completely independent. Whereas, of course, in the West, we see that, you know, the trend is completely the opposite. The time you become a major, everything kind of completely changes for you. So as, you know, of course, an outsider looking at this from, you know, your own American perspective, do you feel that, you know, this kind of a family structure is beneficial?
Coming from the West, is the norm is 18 years out of the house, 22 years, get your first degree, and then it's pretty much let's visit every few months. And it's so different here with the multi-generation in the home. As an American, when I'm older and I can't care for myself, would I rather live in a nursing home or would I rather live with one of my children? I think the feeling would be there, nice to have somebody to take care of you and to have that in the back of your mind that forever I have this safety net. The flip side of that is that has to be, I think, requested of the child. What I see here that's quite different is that's the expectation. And I sometimes wonder what's the positives and what's the negatives of that. But certainly this multi-family homes where brothers and sisters and mom and dad and grandpa are all in the same home, it looks like they have a wonderful time when I'm in their home.
Everybody is so well knitted at the end of the day. And it's just not your immediate family like your parents or your siblings. It's the grandfathers, the grandmothers, and then of course the forefathers, so to speak. And then even after marriage, I think that takes another kind of the dynamics change when you're living in a joint family system. So I think at the end of the day, it's something very culture specific. Fiona, you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, well, I just agree. I think that the family home, the typical family home in Pakistan is paradise for children and old people. But it's also, you know, I lived in Italy for many years and the family is very important there. And there are things like having meals together.
Right.
Which I think are so important. It's so important to a sort of healthy upbringing for everybody. And, you know, the sad little child eating its meal on its own that sometimes I've seen in the UK.
Another thing that I would want you to address today is, of course, you know, the viewpoint of an expat who has moved to Pakistan and who's very new to the Pakistani society, and what are like kind of the basically attitudes that you come across with regards to your acceptance in the society. Because I've had quite a few expat friends and they say that, you know, sometimes we feel that people, you know, kind of receive us with some preconceived notions. So what would be those myths that you would want to debunk?
The main one for me is, you know, people see an older woman and they think, I don't know, I need helping up the stairs, or I don't know, a wheelchair at the airport, or, you know, and I'm pretty healthy. I can walk up a mountain, you know, I don't need...
I think that's out of sheer respect.
I know it is.
It's one of those issues on which you could perhaps have a cultural shock, because this is something that you don't see in the West.
Exactly. Or people telling me, you know, why are you here? Why aren't you home with your family? You should be with your family. And, you know, it's like, well, why? I'm still working. I'm quite happy living here, living away from my family. And, you know, actually I'm very close to my family. But it's just these kind of things, I suppose. People see me and they think of their mom and they think, well, my mom would never be on her own, the other side of the world, sort of doing a job or whatever.
I think that's something very different for them. But I think the positive thing to look at it is because a lot of people now, I think of all ages, are actually, you know, choosing Pakistan to come here, to actually live here, to work here. Pakistan is also deemed to be, according to a lot of reports now, a very popular expat, you know, destination at the end of the day. On which, sir, I'll come to you, because I think this question again is relevant for you too, since you have lived in so many countries, 30 countries, before you came to Pakistan. So what was it that made Pakistan so attractive for you compared to any other country?
For sure, the hospitality, and like I mentioned earlier, my coming here was based on work. And one of my biggest apprehensions, though, was, were the local citizens going to perceive me as, hey, I'm just another expat flying in, do some work, take a salary and leave? And that's not why I came here, and it's not why I'm still here today living full time. It's my choice. I enjoyed the people, I enjoy the culture, very much enjoy the people and just everything about living here, and the respect and moving around and the cost of living. These are all big, big positives.
Right.
So it's a matter of choice.
It's a matter of choice.
It's a matter of choice.
And I think that is also a narrative which must, of course, you know, go forward, because a lot of times I've come across people who typically think that, you know, if somebody is coming, if a foreigner is coming to Pakistan, perhaps might just be for work reasons. What they don't understand is that there are people like him out there who actually want to explore new cultures, meet different people, and of course, you know, stay there because they like it. It's a matter of choice, like you yourself said. On which, Fiona, I'll come to you. And to conclude today's show, I think a very important perspective to this entire conversation should, of course, that be of the expats and foreigners, more so when they come to Pakistan. So, you know, if you were to give some advice, if you were to give some tips to all the people who are watching the show and who possibly do want to relocate to Pakistan being foreigners, what would those tips be, and what are the things that they need to, of course, be mindful of? Because, you know, a lot of times expats say that whenever they do come to Pakistan, they are perceived in a certain manner.
Okay, I'm going to give you two images, I think. So one image is going to a wedding, actually, that I wasn't supposed to go to because it was COVID. But it was quite a sort of lively wedding, people that didn't have that much money. And I just remember having the most enormous amount of fun. Everybody up dancing, it was just crazy, and this incredible sense of people enjoying themselves, and they appeared with vegetarian meal for me. And which was amazing. And the other sort of thing that is a kind of memory, or that one of my favourite things is going to the walled city and having a paratha and sitting on the ground, having the paratha in the newspaper.
So you're going to miss that?
I'm really going to miss that.
Right.
I just love it.
You must come back to Pakistan for that, because I think that is an experience very peculiar to Pakistan.
Yes,
even other Asian countries, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I'm also going to come back to buy clothes. I think the clothes here are amazing, not just the designs, and you can get more, you know, there are clothes that are very, very local, but there are local designs that are also, you can, you know, we can wear in the West.
There's a lot of variety. I think there's something for everybody out there at the end of the day, and something very affordable.
But the quality of the material, the patterns, the colours is just amazing.
Right.
So I'm really going to wow my friend. I spend all my money till I leave on clothes and take it back.
Right, madam, your point is noted. On which, sir, I'll come to you. And before we conclude today's show, I think a very important question which we must address is the fact that, you know, a lot of times we see that, you know, the correct impression of Pakistan is, of course, not portrayed. So in this regard, what would your proposals be, both with regards to, of course, you know, reporting in the national Pakistani media, and, of course, you know, reporting and the image which is being projected by the international media, that what are the changes that they need to make when it comes to, of course, portraying and ensuring that, you know, an accurate image of the country is so given to the world?
Okay, well, with regards to international media, of course, the world sees Pakistan to the large extent through the eyes of the big international medias. My own family and my own upbringing in America, my view was the hardships, the disasters, unsafe conditions, and so this tainted my view, and I think many Westerners' view of what is Pakistan. So I would like to see from the international media more a focus on the successes, is the thriving businesses, rising employment, great markets for fabrics, like Fiona said, great restaurants where you get the best meal in town for less than what you're going to spend for burger, fries, and a Coke in the USA. So this, from the international side, international media, I'd like to see that as an improvement.
Right.
Domestically, although my Urdu is very limited, from what I see on TV is I haven't seen as much focus on women in successful business leadership roles. In my field, I see women in the 1 to 6 years making good progress, then perhaps they pause, they have to re-enter, and maybe they've lost the momentum of the fast track.
Right.
I think there are some cases where women have become very successful business leaders, but I think they're few and far between, and those should be highlighted.
Those should be highlighted. I think the stress should be there that I think we need to show women in positions of power so as to get that message across that, you know, Pakistan is not a country which is, of course, oppressing women. It is rather one country which believes in, you know, empowering its women, because women at the end of the day, they do constitute more than 50% of the Pakistani population. You wanted to add something to that?
Yes, I wanted to add, you know, that there's a lot of women that are not necessarily top business women. I'm talking about education. I'm talking about excellent female teachers and teacher educators. And maybe they're working in a small school in a village. There's also girls I was telling you about, you know, that are working on their own to improve their digital skills and setting up small enterprises.
Right.
So I would like to see these people featured on TV because they are also models. They're attainable models.
Right.
So a girl living in a small village might think, I'm never going to be, you know, CEO of a large company. I'm never going to be, I don't even want to be, but I could be doing something very, very useful for my community.
Of course.
Those people as well need to be
Basically,
highlighted more.
women from all parts of the Pakistani society belonging to different, of course, classes, you know, regardless of, you know, whatever background that they have. And I think this is a very valid suggestion because I too, as a female, agree with you on this that, you know, of course, unfortunately, more often than not, only those women who are highlighted, who are in very important positions of power, they get all that, you know, attention. And women like the one that you've mentioned, they are often ignored. So definitely that's a very apt recommendation, on which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, madam, and thank you so much, sir, for joining us here today.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
for
much.
having
You're
me.
most welcome. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about, you know, the foreigners, or for that matter, the expats' impression of Pakistan, how they perceive the Pakistani society, what they think of our culture, and then, of course, in that regard, the customs and the etiquettes, which, of course, we as a Pakistani society have. In this regard, we also tried at a very basic level to debunk so many myths which unfortunately do exist about, you know, Pakistani people and the Pakistani society at large. And of course, like one of my panelists very rightly said, when we actively aim to do away with all such myths and, of course, misnomers, the media here, of course, has a very important, rather very pivotal role to play. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.